Once again, I'd like to say thank you for being here this evening. I'd like to welcome those of you who are not participating in the meal but have decided to be here for the business portion of our meeting tonight. Thank you for joining us. We are going to start with a short devotional thought. When my wife and I were living in Denver, we lived not far from a place that has become semi-famous. Indian Hills Community Center is a place that has a sign outside of the building, and someone on the staff there has decided that they want to use that sign to communicate in a rather unique and creative way. And so you will drive by the Indian Hills Community Center, and you'll see a sign like this that says, "Turning vegan would be a big mistake." Then you've got this one, "I have no beef with vegans. My fear of moving stairs is escalating." Oh, try this one, "A bike in town keeps running me over. It's a vicious cycle." Oh yeah, I know. Some of you are going, "Oh, these are really bad." This is my kind of humor. I'm sorry. Then you've got this one, "The only thing flat earthers have to fear is fear itself." Oh, come on. That was kind of good, wasn't it? And then I think this is the last one that I had. "Kitchen remodelers are counterproductive." Oh, come on. Oh, goodness. The point being that I wanted to make as we looked at these different signs this evening is that, did I have another one? Oh, no, sorry, I've got another one. "I'm terrified of elevators, and I'm taking steps to avoid them." Got that one? Okay, let's go back. So, the point is that words can be used in very creative ways, and words can communicate in interesting ways. And so we want to be careful about how we choose our words. Throughout the years, I've heard a variety of people say, and not particularly anyone here in this congregation, but I've heard people say, "We want to be the best church in the community." Okay? Now, I want you to think about what that means and so on. We want to be the best church in the community. And contrast that with this next statement. We want to be the best church for the community. Do you see the subtle distinction between those two phrases? We want to be the best church in the community almost places the focus on us as a church. Whereas this statement, "we want to be the best church for the community," places the emphasis on the community and what we can do on behalf of the community. I hope that during 2019, as we take a look at our theme for this year, "A Life of Service," I hope that we'll take very seriously this question of how can we be the best church for the community? How can we be the best church for the community? I hope that we'll ask that on an individual basis. As I go about my work, as I live next door to my neighbors, as I encounter people on the street, how can I be the best person for this community? We might want to ask that question as a family, as we live in a particular neighborhood, as we interact with people in our neighborhood, as we have other families that we interact with. How can we be the best family in this community? I think that as local ministries and ministries of a church, I would trust that every ministry would ask itself the question, how can we make this ministry the best ministry for the community? I also think that we ought to ask that question on every board, every committee that comprises this church family. How can this board, how can this committee make decisions so that we can be the best church for the community? It changes the focal point of the conversation when we ask, how can we be the best church for the community, rather than simply saying, how can we be the best church in the community? And so as a congregation, I hope that we'll take this to heart. And I hope that we will take very seriously our role and place in the community so that we can be the best church for the community. I love this statement that Ellen White makes in opening up the book, The Acts of the Apostles. The church was organized for service. The church was organized for service. That's huge, isn't it? And it gives us an opportunity to think about how we can be, again, most effective in serving for our community. And this fits in very nicely with our theme for this year, a life of service. And so I'm going to just throw out an idea that has been running around in my brain, and I want to share it with you tonight. What if we tracked the number of people in our congregation who are engaged in service? We keep track of a number of different things. We track our attendance, we track tithes, we track offerings, we track a number of different things. But what if one of the things we tracked was how many people were engaged in service for our community? One of the ways that some churches have done this is simply at the end of the year taken the total number of volunteers and then divided that by the average weekly attendance. And so, for example, if you had 50 people who volunteered throughout the year in your church and you had an average weekly attendance of 100, you would have 50%. Does that make sense? Understand how that math works? And there's probably different ways of tracking it. This is a way that I've tracked this in the past. But here's what I'm thinking. What if by the end of 2019, this church was able to say, we had a number of volunteers equal to 100% of our average weekly attendance? What if we had people who were so engaged in our community, doing things for the community, that at the end of the year we could look back and we could say, we had 100% of our average weekly attendance of volunteers who were serving our community? Wouldn't that be great? I think it'd be fabulous. I think it's doable. And I'd like to challenge us this evening as we're here at Waypoints 2019, looking forward to the rest of this year. I'd like to encourage each one of us to think about how we can be a part of being the best church for our community. What might that look like? How could we engage? How could we be involved in a way that we could be the best church for our community? And I believe that as we do so, if we could get close to that 100% mark, I think we would have made an impact in helping to move people closer to God, wouldn't you? Let's bow our heads and pray, shall we? Father, thank you for this evening when we have an opportunity not only to hear reports of what has been done, but we can think about the opportunities that await us in 2019. I pray, Father, that we will ask ourselves this question on a regular basis, whether it's in our families, whether it's on an individual basis, whether it's in our boards, committees, wherever it may be. I hope that we will ask this question: how can we be the best church for our community? So, Father, I pray that that question will guide us, will keep us focused in 2019. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. So in your books this evening, if you have your books, I'd like you to take those out just real quickly. And I'd like you to notice that after the welcome page, and by the way, on the welcome page, if you've read through the welcome, I once again want to apologize that our tours of the upstairs of the Experience Center are not going to be available. Our drywall people did not arrive to finish the project yet. We're hopeful that that's going to happen here shortly, but no promises, but we'll let you know when that happens. The next page is a page in which we would like to express our appreciation to all those who contribute their leadership to this church. And so you have a listing of various ministry leaders here on this page. And we'd also like to express our thanks to those who helped make this evening possible. In the lower right-hand corner of that page, you'll notice a number of people who have contributed to this evening. And I'd like to take some time just at this moment. Would you express your thanks to Daisy and her crew for the wonderful meal tonight? Thank you, Daisy. Pass that along. I think they can hear it in there, but if they can't, make sure they know that we are very appreciative of. And dessert is coming. Yes, and you'll notice we're taking a dessert break on the agenda. We've even got that on the agenda. So, again, thank you to each one of you who takes part in our church by modeling and displaying leadership. We thank you for that. We do need to then turn to the next page, which is the page that records the minutes from our last business session on Sunday evening, March 18, 2018. You'll notice the individuals who were there in attendance that evening. Meeting called to order, devotional and prayer. The meeting was chaired by Nathan Adams. We had panel members who were part of that meeting. The minutes from our last Waypoints meeting were approved at the March business meeting. And then you'll notice the other items there on the minutes for that evening. And so with those in mind, I would be willing at this point to accept a motion that we approve the church business meeting of March 18, 2018. Is there a motion that we approve these minutes? Okay, I see a motion. Is there a second? Second, thank you so much. All in favor, please raise your hands. Is there anyone who's opposed to those minutes? Thank you very much. Those minutes have now been approved. Thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to invite Brandon Carnes to come up and do a family life report. He will be followed by Pastor Leif, who will be doing a PV youth report. So Brandon, come on up.
Good evening. Hey, somebody's awake. That's fantastic, even after the food. Okay, so if you turn to the page with the big family life, and it's got a bunch of spider-looking things on it, I thought for my page this year, I'd kind of do a refresher on what family life is. There are a few things I want to draw your attention to on this. The first and the biggest glaring thing on this is that kind of the very ethos of what family life is can't be very well represented in this. Because the idea of family life is interconnectedness. We as Adventists understand that, right? Health affects your spirituality, various things like that. And so the idea of family life is that one thing always affects everything else. What happens at school affects what happens at home. What happens at home affects what happens here. So what happens in somebody's marriage affects the way that they parent their children. And so I do want you to look at that in this way, and I think that's something that you guys kind of inherently understood. When I was interviewing to come here initially, I asked the question, how much time would you guys be okay with me being at the school even though I'm not a school employee? And the answer came back as much as you want, because you guys understand that those are our parishioners, those are our kids, and so we don't need to start drawing lines. So that's one of the things I want to bring your attention to. I also want to put down in associate pastor, Northern California Conference obligations. That's not necessarily something that comes with the family life title, but I wanted to put it there because I wanted you guys to be aware of some of the things that take my time that don't necessarily affect you, or that don't, that can't be really avoided. Things like camp meeting, monthly pastors meetings, ordination meetings, and those are things that some of the things that grow me professionally as a pastor, that you want the pastor to grow professionally, but not things that you necessarily see. Last thing I want you to look at is under children's ministries on the very top left, you'll see Global Resource Collective. And now I'm kind of jumping into some of the things I'm proud of from this last year. So this year I started on helping with what we're calling the Global Resource Collective. And it's a group of pastors that have come together and said, we want to resource what we're doing with everybody. And so rather than just kind of working in isolation, we're coming in and bringing our ideas to one central location. My piece of that, which I'm really excited about, is I'm helping with the visioning. I'm actually in charge of the junior high Sabbath school publication, and we're starting to develop a full Sabbath school publication. And I don't typically write that, but I am writing that for this next week, and that's going to be going out to several hundred churches. And when they say that's global, it is truly global. One of my closest contacts is in Adelaide, Australia. And so that's something I'm really proud of. Family ministries, that was kind of an experiment this last year, and the very last event that we had, I was very pointed, and I said, hey guys, is this helping? Is this worth my time? Is this worth the church's money? And I got a really solid feedback, and there were a lot of people that are saying, this is amazing. We don't really often have events at the church that are just designed to, get us as a couple growing, and so I'm really excited about that. So we're growing family ministries and marriage ministries. I'm really excited about some more of the things that we're doing with that. I started a 7th and 8th grade class. The vision behind that class, and we're doing this at EIS, the vision behind that class, Holly and I are working on that together, was to start talking about some of the things that junior hires face that, honestly, when we were kids, you probably didn't have to face until you were in high school or maybe even college. But things like drugs, sex, alcohol, those are all happening much earlier than we anticipated. And some families are talking about that at home. Some are not. And so we're going to talk about it. Lisa Dickinson has been helping me a lot with starting to come up with ideas about, okay, how do we grow them into understanding where they are socially and how this all works. And that's been a lot of fun. We've kind of been mucking through that and figuring out where this is. And usually the first year is just figuring it out. But I think the kids are having a lot of fun. I've gotten good feedback from their teacher, and she says that they ask for it. So next year, we're not going to be adding more because, this is always kind of a balance between discovering how to work with parents who are usually overworked anyways, right? We don't want to overprogram just to convince ourselves that we're being effective. So in this next year, we're going to be further developing these ministries, working on what that means and how to be more effective with our families. And so, yeah, this is a family ministry report. Thank you so much for your support this year and your continuing support for next.
Good evening, church. I was about to say Happy Sabbath, but good thing I didn't. Again, I'm Pastor Leif, the youth pastor here in Placerville. I'm so excited just to share what God has done in this ministry this year. And so before I do that, let me just, if you guys have your booklets with you guys, I'm just gonna again just kind of share the mission and vision of this PV Youth, that stands for Placerville Youth. And so this PV Youth, this ministry exists to engage, to equip, and to extend the unconditional love and incomparable freedom found only in Christ. And so our vision is to build this culture, this space where these students, high school students, can feel free to engage with one another, to be equipped, and to what God has given their talents, and not only just to be equipped, but also to extend God's love in our surroundings. And so I'm going to just share with you this evening just, what happened this year, kind of the things that happened throughout this year. And so I'm going to start with the youth chapel and just some pictures of, how we started this ministry as in this last year, as I've been here a year and 4 months or so. So this is how the youth chapel was when I got here. This is what was given to me. Then we moved into we kind of arranged it in a way that we had some lighting, some stage. If you guys can see those pictures there's some staging, and then the kids sitting there. There's some chairs right there. So from there, we were there. We used that setting for a couple months. It was great. It was good. The kids liked it. However, we actually went, and this is how it looks now, into more of a setting of a family-oriented, like a living room kind of thing. So we took out the stage per se, just to not have just the kids that always participate, the ones always that are singing, and then the rest, like they just feel like they're not part of it. So we kind of switched from just here, kind of having a stage and just chairs, to this type of settings. So it's just more of a family oriented, and we've been focusing a lot on just having this family just a family oriented group here. And so this is some of the pictures that what it looks like right now, our chapel. So kids are really enjoying this, not only just because it just feels more homey, but it just is creating this atmosphere of this family. And so it's been helping a lot. One things that some of the activities that we do is we call it PV Youth Cares, and PV Youth Cares is all about doing things for our community, just extending God's love, doing things for in other places and things that we found. And so there's just some pictures that I just want to share how we started this year. We came here. A group of us just came here to help out. It just was the ambulance. Also, we've been going to Placerville Main Street to pray with people. And this has been awesome, just a good experience for the kids so they can get out of their comfort zone. And I know as we started this year, I mean, there were some of them, they didn't know what to do. They were like, just beside their friends, but, or they're beside someone else, but they just would not do anything, kind of like. But as the more we did it, they were able to get out of that comfort zone. So there are just some pictures that of this event. As you guys see, those kids are just praying with people in the streets, like people they don't even know, and they're just asking to pray for them. We've also been to Green Valley Church to help out and feeding the people in need. And so this is another event that happened this year that was also just very powerful in our lives, just to be able to help other people as well, people that maybe we don't know, but it was just good to help them out with this ministry there. We've also been to the Pleasant Care Home a couple of times, and so we've been building relationship with this group of ladies here, and so we've been going there, having a program for them, doing their nails. As you guys can see, some of these pictures right here. So we've been having a just good time, just going out there and doing things for other people. We also been to not only just been praying for people in Placerville Main Street, but also during the summer we went out there and we were given some free snow cones. So that was also just refreshing for the people. Believe it or not, there was people that were just saying, "Hey, this is free, snow cones," and just people look at us and like, I don't want to take that. It's free. Or they thought they were just going to ask him for something else. We're like, no, it's just totally free. We're just here to give you guys a free snow cone. And so it was just interesting just to see the reaction of the people. But we were blessed by it. And just like I said, people were, with time, people were like, okay, this is actually just totally free. So I'm not being forced to for something. So it was a good experience for the kids as well. Another activity we did for their finals. We went there. PV Youth was there, just representing them and supporting them. The EAS, just saying, hey, you can finish strong. You can just do your best as you guys are doing your finals during finals week. So it was again just a good opportunity for us just to be there at the school. Another thing that we did for CARES was, as you guys know, some of you guys know, we went to to help out the Paradise fire victims, and this was just an amazing time that we had there. It was around maybe, let me have my notes here. We had around 30 students that we went there, and some adults that went with us, is just to help out, and just the experience that the moment that we do, the more we do this, the kids get this, they're blessed just by doing this kinds of activities that we call them PB Youth Cares. Also, we have this activities that we call it PB Youth Hangs. It's just to hang around, to get to know each other, to build friendships, long-lasting friendships. And so just want to share with you guys, some of the things that we've been doing. We've been going bowling. We've been just going in and out. We went to the park just to hang out to just build those relationships. Not only with the people that usually come here, but we also get some visitors as we do this. So this is no spiritual kind of thing, but it's more of just an activity. So we can also invite other people. That way we can just build those relationships with them. And so, you just hear some pictures, just the kids eating at In-N-Out, roller skating, and so on. So then our huddles. This is our morning programs that we have every Saturday mornings. It's not our Sabbath school. We don't call it Sabbath school. You just call it PB Youth Huddles, where you just come here together, and they're built to equip the students through just some honest talk and just the Word of God, and this. So this is things that we started this last year. At the beginning of the year, we started like around with 7-8 kids. Now we have an average of 6 and 17 kids coming to our regular Sabbath school program. So it's just been a blessing just to see that the kids are responding, and they're not only that, but they've been leading that. They're doing the talks, they're doing the preaching, they're doing the worship, the praise and worship. So we're trying to equip them as much as we can, because I only have four years with them. So we're trying our best just to do our best to equip them. The house gathering. This was an event that we did it with 3 different churches from the Sacramento area. We got together with a lot of high schoolers and college kids, and it was just a youth event that happened. And so we did it in Sacramento. You see our young people not only just here, but we were able to lead worship in a different church in Sacramento. And then at the end, we actually did it in our campus. So all the churches from Sacramento, they came here. And so we were about 80 kids that came here, and we got together. We had this good experience with God and just worship together. The My City Conference. This is a youth conference that happens every year. Last year, I was able to take 8 kids. They were blessed. Those kids, there was kids that they never had this experience of just going to a youth retreat, and they never had nothing to do with God, or they didn't want to just have any type of relationship with God. But after this youth event, they were just so blessed, and just they were open to kind of like listening to God, and they were and two of them actually started coming to our youth event just because of that retreat. And so this year actually there's already 16 kids registered. So we actually doubled the amount of kids from last year, and so we still have until March the 1st and 2nd, so we still have room for people to register. So I'm just really excited for this because we have 16 to 18 kids already registered for this youth conference that is happening here in El Dorado Hills. The leaders retreat, we're able to go to Dallas, and I took some of my leaders. They were blessed. They were also just equipped by other leaders over there from my brother's church in Arlington, and so they were able to learn, to be equipped, how to do media, how to do some video editing, how to organize an event. And so there were just a bunch of different things that they were able to learn and bring them here, and we were able to apply this, looking at our youth, and we're able to apply some of the things that we learned over there. Waypoint Camp, again, also was a blessing. We had around 25 to 30 kids this year that we did our Waypoint Camp. They were encouraged to have that personal relationship with God. I challenged them to wake up at 6 in the morning, just to have that starting with Jesus. That's how we called it. And so that we gather around the fire. We just kind of like opened the Word of God, and we were challenged them to have that relationship with God in a personal way. The worship night, some of you guys are aware of this. We did our first worship night here with the youth. It was a blessing for those that attended. I think we're all blessed. The amazing thing about this is that my youth leaders, they actually came out with the idea, and they put it all together. From selecting all the songs, they're gonna say throughout the songs, we not only, it was just a moment like, okay, we're just gonna come here and we're just gonna sing songs. This was not about just singing. It was about praising, having this time together. We fast. We fast before we went into this activity, and it was just a good moment for us just for them to plan all this out. And so we're excited that we're actually gonna go ahead and we're gonna have our second worship night on April the 20th of this year. So we're planning to have it here in our experience center. So if you guys can also just put that in your calendar, it's gonna be just an amazing time. We can come here as a family and worship together. We did some Christmas. We participated in the Christmas program this year. Again, it was just an amazing time with the kids. Some of the kids that participated, they were not even a part of our PV youth, but they were able to help us out. One of the kids right there, if you see him, is Calvin, and so he's been coming since then. He's actually been coming with us to our youth group, and he's just been expressing that he just feels that this is a place that he belongs to, and so this is amazing just to see how kids are actually feeling that environment of a family as we're trying to create. So I'm going to finish with, in 2018, our focus was to equip our kids and to equip and to engage one another as we're creating this family place, and so it's been just an amazing thing what God is doing with this ministry. We've been able to share with one another, to laugh, to cry with one another. So God is creating this great group of kids where they feel free to open themselves and just to be open to one another as we are growing together in this journey. And so we focus on equipping and engaging. But our mission for 2019 is to be more intentional about extending. Again, as we're also as a church, we're creating this as our serving. Also, our PV youth, we're going to focus a lot this year into into extending God's love. Whatever we learn, we're trying to go into the Bible more and just get in that personal relationship with God. And so we want to try. Our mission is to be more intentional about extending what God is doing in our lives with other people. And so we actually just order our PBU hoodies. And also, if you guys want to support us, this is a fundraiser. You guys have it also in here. Our hoodies, and it says Jesus is everything. That's going to be our motto for this year. We're going to emphasize what Jesus is everything for us. He's enough, and so we're trying to extend. So if you ever want to support us just by getting your own hoodie, or if you just don't like to wear hoodies, you can just donate money towards this, or just sponsor any kids that don't have this able to have this hoodie. And one last thing before I finished, we actually started from PV Youth. Actually, have a privilege to just have 5. We started with 0 young adults helping out. So I was just working with high school kids. Now I have a privilege to work with 5 college kids. That there are leaders in our youth. They're a mentorship to this. They're mentors to these high schoolers. And so now we actually created this PVYA, Placerville Young Adults, small group that we're actually starting this. Right now we have 5 college kids, so we're starting this. I'm so excited for this because it's not, they also need, these college kids, they also need something for them. And so we're starting with this small group so we can extend it, and hopefully we can also start creating this, not only for high schoolers, but also something for the college kids as they also need. And sadly enough, we see that these kids are not in church. So that's what we're trying to create, and we created this. And with them, with the 5 people that we have right now, we came together, we prayed about it. What can we do for this age? And so we created this PVYA, as we're gonna just excited for what's gonna happen this year with this group. Again, thank you so much for all the support, for your prayers. PV Youth, we couldn't do it, first of all, if it wasn't from God, and also for this church that is really supportive of what we do here. So thank you so much.
So as lead pastor, let me just give you a brief report about some of the things that took place during 2018 that are a reminder that it takes the whole body of Christ to make a difference in our community. And I want to say thank you to every one of you who participated in a variety of ways. We've got a variety of ministries here on our campus and from our church. We've got jail ministry, we've got our Alcoholics Anonymous group that meets, we've got community services, Child Connect has been a part of our ministry here. And so we've got a number of ministries that are making a difference in the community. And additionally, we've started some things, and we did some things last year that I think were kind of great. We revived Monday night learning classes. We had a wonderful communion service hosted by Dr. Reg and Shirley Rice at their home in late September, which was a wonderful event. Of course, we do our annual Vacation Bible School during the summer, and one of the things that this church was very supportive of this last year was the gala for El Dorado Adventist School in September. But there are 4 things that I really want to highlight as we take a look at some of the things that happened in 2018. And the first one is the 2018 Amen Clinic. The Amen Clinic was an amazing experience. If you did not have a chance to come up and be a part of this or see what took place, we did everything from haircuts. These 3 ladies, I mean, they were going constantly those 2 days. We provided eyeglasses for our community for free. We had, I think, 130 roughly pairs of eyeglasses that were distributed to our community. And if you want to hear some of the stories about people and their appreciation for that ministry, talk to Larry Ballou, who had the privilege of handing out and distributing those eyeglasses when they came into the church. And then, of course, we had dental work that was provided for people. And so many of you volunteered, contributed not just your time, in some cases contributed money to make this happen. And to see the energy in this room on those 2 days was absolutely phenomenal. And so I just want to thank you and let you know that we are committed to continuing to use this facility for events of this type as we move forward. One of the other highlights from 2018, of course, was the business meetings where we discussed finishing and completing the Experience Center. We've read the minutes, approved the minutes from our March meeting, and of course, we also had some discussion about this at our Waypoints in 2018. But we're committed to finishing the Experience Center. It is getting close, folks, believe it or not. Even though the drywallers have just a bit more work to do, it's going to go quickly. And you're going to hear reports from our building committee chairman, Arndt Krogstad, and our fundraising committee chairman, Reg Rice, here later this evening, and they'll give you some additional information about this. But I hope you're excited about the possibility of how this facility is going to be used not only for us as a congregation, as our children have new spaces, secure spaces, but also as we finish this place and can use it for more activities such as the Amen Clinic. So please continue to support the completion of the Experience Center. Then one of the other highlights of 2018 was our 125th anniversary celebration, which was coordinated by Lois Roberts. It included the Crystal Harmony reunion on Friday night. We invited John Kress to come back and speak to us for our 125th anniversary. We had over 440 people in attendance that weekend. We had a wonderful experience with opportunity on Sabbath afternoon to get to reacquainted with people. It was fabulous seeing this tent alongside the Experience Center and people being able to have a wonderful meal there and spend time in the afternoon. And then, of course, the weekend concluded with a concert by the Heritage Singers, which was a good way to conclude the weekend's festivities. But that was a highlight of 2018, and I hope that you enjoyed being a part of that weekend event here at Placerville. I want to close by talking about PV Youth. You just heard a report from Pastor Leif about PV Youth. I want to say just a little bit more. As Pastor Leif shared with you, I hope that you have gained an appreciation for his ministry here in this congregation. Pastor Leif's ministry is making an impact on our high school young people, and as you heard him just say, is going to extend on into our college-age students as well. Pastor Leif, it was approved this last year for Pastor Leif to be brought on full-time. Pastor Leif is what we call a local hire. His check is supported entirely through the giving of this congregation to a fund that supports Pastor Leif's ministry here. He's not paid through the channels of the regular means of tithe, but he is paid through your giving to the youth pastor fund that you will see on Adventist Giving. And so if you have that app on your phone, or if you'd like to go on the website, Adventist Giving website, or if you'd like to simply put something on a tithe envelope, I just want to remind you that Pastor Leif's ministry here happens thanks to your financial support. And it is going to require your continued financial support for us to continue Pastor Leif's ministry here. One of the great things that, as I reflect back on having brought Pastor Leif here is it really was kind of a God thing. For many years, this church had hired individuals who had just graduated recently from Pacific Union College. In some cases, I'm not sure they had graduated yet. And the leadership of this church said, we'd like to have someone who has a little bit more depth of experience to serve as the youth pastor. And in addition, philosophically, we wanted to make sure that we didn't simply have a youth pastor here for a period of 9 to 12 to 15 months, but we hoped that we could have someone here for a longer period of time so that the impact would be greater. And I think you're beginning to see, now that Leif has been here 15 to 18 months, you're beginning to see the shape of his ministry here taking place. And I hope that you're excited about the possibilities of what the next 12 to 24 months of Pastor Leif's ministry here could look like, and the impact that that could have on this congregation and this community. So I hope that, again, you will support us and support Pastor Leif's ministry. Again, I just want to say thank you to each one of you as members of this congregation who make the wonderful things happen that took place during 2018, whether it was, again, the Amen Clinic under the direction of Janine Jones, whether it was our 125th anniversary celebration led by Lois Roberts, whether it's the various ministries that take place here in this congregation, whether it's the completion of the Experience Center that's being led out by Arndt Krogstad and Reg Rice, or whether it's the ministry of our youth pastor. I just want to say thank you for your support. We look forward to a wonderful 2019 as we move together as the body of Christ. We're going to take a short break for dessert. I hope that you're still left just a little bit of room to fill in those last few spots, but we've got dessert over there on the table, so we're going to give you about 10 or 15 minutes for a dessert break, and then we'll get into some of the business that we need to conduct this evening. So don't all get up at once.
Some of the things that require some voting tonight, I'm going to present some of the financial information, and you have a copy of the budget in there. Before we do that, if anyone would like to make a motion, we've done this in the past, to limit any comments. We've done 2 minutes in the past just to try to make our time here more expedient. If there is a motion to that we set that as a rule tonight, that we limit comments from the microphones to 2 minutes per person, I would entertain a motion for that. It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Okay. And all in favor, please raise your hands. And any opposed to that? Okay. It will pass, so we will have a 2-minute limit per person on comments. Okay, so you should have the budget in your, the proposed budget in your books there if you'd like to turn to that. One of the probably glaring things you will first notice is a lot of decreases in that. And that was something, unfortunately, we had to do. So we are proposing a total budget tonight of $400,908. On Finance Committee and through the board, we went through what we brought in versus what we were spending and felt we needed to try to bring those closer together, which obviously means cutting in some areas. The goal is hopefully that we continue to bring our income up, but the discrepancy between what we have been bringing in and what we've been spending was getting fairly large. Last year, our budgeted expenses were $432,000. We actually ended up spending $444,000 approximately, which is actually only about 2% off. So what we budgeted to spend and what we actually spent were relatively, and that I think is fairly typical. We're usually, we're not always perfect on our projections, but we're usually within a few percentage points. So I think that was okay, even though we technically did go a little bit over our budget on expenses, we were in the ballpark. The problem, however, was the money we actually brought in for the church budget as income donations was just shy of $300,000. It was $299,000. Now, we were not planning necessarily to bring in 100% of that. We typically will allocate a portion of our rental income that we receive to go towards the church budget. The rationale behind that being that people who are renting our facility are also contributing to some of the costs of our budget, electricity, maintenance, and things like that. So we had been already projecting $62,000 of our rental income to go towards the budget. So our projection of what we were hoping to obtain through church budget income donations was approximately $370,980, of which, again, we were short on that as we only received $299,000. So we were short approximately $71,000. So that led us to say, okay, we need to start going through some items here and plan to spend less on that if we're going to be more in line with where we need to be. An additional challenge that we're going to face this year is currently Bayside is no longer renting. We had been receiving approximately, the rent had changed a little bit midway through the year because the lease gets renegotiated, but I think it was approximately $41,000 of rental income from Bayside that we currently do not have anymore. We have nobody in there. There's talk of looking to see if we can fill additional rental of the old sanctuary building. We do have other rental income still in place. We have a projection this year for approximately still $41,000, but again, that's about half of what we had planned for and received last year. So that's another challenge. Additionally, we are also obviously extended further in areas of trying to raise money for the new building, which does not fall in the church budget. The bright side, however, to look at is our actual total giving of dollars that what I would say stay in the church. So things we're actually doing, was actually up 3%. So if you take our total giving, which is over $1 million, and you factor out tithe, that goes all to the conference. I'm sure most of you are aware of the structure that we don't actually keep not one penny of tithe. That all goes, it funnels through here, but we do not touch that. It goes to the conference. So if you factor out tithe and also money that was given for mission trips, which again really doesn't stay here per se. We were actually up 3% from last year, so we had more money coming in for our physical plant and for our operations and our ministry, but we still, because we were spending more in various areas, that led to a shortfall. Additionally, I would note that our tithe was actually down 4% comparatively, and if you use tithe as an overall barometer of how much people are willing to give, it actually shows the percentage of dollars coming to our church is good, but we need to continue to stimulate our income essentially. And the only other way to balance out our shortfall is then to also start decreasing some of our expenses. So you see the budget that is there. If there's any questions or comments on that, I will entertain those at this point. Yeah, I don't. So the only things that potentially could have been increased would have been slight amount, probably up in the top half, and it would have only been essentially what we do when we make that whole. A lot of that top half is stuff we don't have a ton of control, and it's things you can't necessarily cut. And what we do for one year to the next is basically what did we spend last year, and if it went up from the year before, we're going to put it to pretty much what it was last year. Now, unless it's something that we feel we have a little control over and say, okay, we need to make a cut in that area. So there's possibly a few things that, for instance, salaries the conference sets salaries on some of our employees, and those tend to go up slightly. I could find those numbers and show you later. So there wouldn't be anything real significantly, I don't believe, that would have gone up in there. The EAS subsidy went up about $2,000, I believe. Those were essentially for what the control we had over, we haven't made any changes in staffing, so the dollar amounts would just only be based on, rate changes or things like appropriate rate changes. And again, some of that the conference has different steps and different levels that they classify the employees under, and so we don't have a lot of control over that. Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's a good question. Sorry, I was going to address that. So just because there is a zero under these things too, does not necessarily mean that's not going to happen. What it's going to mean is we're going to have to make a decision as a finance committee and as a church board, the appropriateness of doing those. We actually, the last few years, we have not put BVS in the budget almost every year, And it's been for various reasons. Sometimes we don't have a leader, so we don't know if it's going to happen. And typically, I've always been able to externally just fundraise VBS actually beyond what it even costs. It usually ends up costing, I think, around $2,000. I think last year they started with a little bit. There's already been some, I think, raised. I want to say there's a trust fund for VBS that I want to say has $1,500 or $1,000 in it. So VBS, I'm assuming, is still going to happen. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, I mean, a lot of it I think has to do with just we're spending money in other areas. I think, what the dollars that we would need to balance this budget if we again applied a little bit of our rental income are within what we have received for the range of what we've received in the past for the church budget. This year, like I say, we were $299, but last year we received for the church budget $344,000. I feel that probably some of that money has been redirected to other things, the Vision 2020 and the school possibly, just other needs, which is unfortunate because we still need to keep our budget as a main priority. And I would hope that we can have additional fundraising feel like additional fundraising and not just take out of one pot and redistribute to another. I think that is my feeling of what's probably happened because again, the total giving was not significantly off for the last, if you compare historically over the last couple of years, but we had a significant, if you go back to 2015, 2016, and 17, the church budget income had been steadily increasing by 8 to 10% in there. And so we had hoped that would continue at that same rate this last year in 2018, and instead of so we had built a budget sort of projected on that as well too, and instead of increasing, it actually went the other way and decreased. And so yeah, I'd say our main analysis is probably because of money just getting moved into other important things, because again, there's projects on here and things that we do. The EAS Tuition Assistance Fund is not a church budget item. That's a $30,000 to $40,000 depending on the year amount of money. So that is different than the subsidy. The subsidy, which you see listed there, is our largest single item on there, $153,000. That is what we send to the school out of our church budget for them to operate out of. And then the EES Tuition Assistance is a fund that we use to help our own students who have financial difficulties paying the tuition there. And so we raise that money external of our budget and divvy that up among students of our own church to help them attend the school. VBS sometimes ends up getting funded on or off the budget. I think last year, again, we had initially not put it on. The Amen Clinic was not a budget item. Some of the bigger things we will tend to fundraise separately. Pastor Leif's salary is not on the church budget. We've talked about doing that, but again, we have a large fund in place already with a good amount of money in that. So we have felt that it's better to keep that separate since that was kind of an additional add within the last few years. Yeah. Community services outside funded too, and they actually do very, very well typically as far as having enough money. They have their own trust fund as well. A reserve account. I'm trying to find the balance on here real quick. I'm not seeing it. I think close of the year they had $11,600 in their fund. So yeah, that would be another ministry that is funded outside of the church budget. And a lot of these are things that would be fantastic actually to regularly fund in the budget. I think that would. We've talked about goals of where we'd like to eventually reach, and I think that would be one of them is to have every ministry have more money than it needs and have trust funds building every year for a lot of these ministries. And the other thing would be to stop being so reliant on our rental income, which we currently are. I mean, we had to basically drain all of our rental income to balance our budget last year of the shortfall, plus significantly drain some of our reserve accounts that we like to use for special projects and funds. Yes, cell tower is, Wayne, was 13,000 a year approximately? Yeah, brings in about 13,000 a year. That's something we've also talked, I've at least thought we may want to look at renegotiating or just, we do have a contract and I don't know how much options we have on that, but that's something we could, should look into because that's an easy source of revenue that doesn't affect us too much. Oh, yeah. So there is a mortgage we have on the Experience Center. So yeah, it's hard. If you run it like a household, yes. That's generally the capital improvement kind of things are run separately outside of an operational budget. That's how we've been doing things over the last few years. I know I've said the same thing. As to me, a budget is a financial plan. So should we consider putting that in? And there's pros and cons of doing that. Again, try to get into an end goal where we have operational expenses fully funded out of income. That would be out of like church budget donation income. I think you could then do that. If we could have rental income paying for capital expensive projects, that would make more sense. But currently that's how we've been doing that, is we've had that as a separate, and also it helps track the finances a little bit cleaner too. We list all those on the financial statements that they're available each month. So those are all available, and we've been trying to also recently. The pastor has now started including that in his weekly emails, and that's one of the things that we need. I think it's $10,700 per month to meet the mortgage payment. Mm-hmm. Well, so you're just talking about what you're seeing here. I mean, the statements that we release every month that come out of the Finance Committee have all of that in there. So that I'm not following your transparency question at all, because those are all very transparent. They can be picked up anywhere or any month. They're posted, and they're always available. So that's something that's there. Now tonight, yeah, we were not specifically talking about that. What we needed a vote on is our church budget. We did not include all of the financial stuff in the actual pamphlet, which we could have done, I suppose. But the actual thing that needs a vote is the church budget. The mortgage is going to continue whether we can't vote the mortgage down necessarily. So again, the transparency of that is that it is there. It's not in this booklet specifically tonight, but that it's been an ongoing, and the expense hasn't changed in the last 10 years or 8 years, however long we've had the mortgage. 8 years, I think it is. Yeah. Yes. So that it depends kind of on how it works, and you'd probably want to talk to Penny specifically on how, because she knows exactly. Some of these things have a reserve account also associated with them, so they actually may have a bunch of money in there in a reserve account. Again, we could provide the complete balance sheet if everyone really felt like going through that. And if you want to go through something like that, Penny has it. That's something we have felt is too cumbersome to sit here and analyze in a business meeting. What we're doing here is bringing you a summary of it. So yes, first a couple ways that can happen. Just because there's a zero on here does not mean, again, that we can't spend any money on that. It is going to require an approval to spend money on that. If you gave money towards it at this point, a fund could be created for it. Or the other thing that can happen too is that you can spend money and give donation receipts. If for some reason, like whatever Crater Roll or something, has a $75 budget. So if they spend their $75 but want to continue to spend money outside of that, you can get a donation receipt for yourself personally for spending that money. That is an option. Or yes, money could be given above and beyond that and earmarked specifically for Crater Roll. If you donate $1 for something, the church has to use it for that. Yeah. Sorry, that was a long way to answer your question. Yeah. The Finance Committee went through and created that. And again, based partially off of last year, and then edits and changes that we felt needed to happen to try to get us closer. And then the church board looks at that and approves that as well. All right, well, if there's no other comments, questions, I'd entertain a motion to accept the budget for this 2019 year. Okay, Denise has made the motion. Is there a second? Second, okay. All in favor, please raise hands. And any opposed? Okay, it is carried.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to report on our progress of our building. And I'm going to explain where we are and where we're going. But before I do that, I would like to take a couple of minutes to explain how we're doing this and how we've organized it and what's happening. In the interest of time, I'll simply say, as Nathan was saying, we. And we means the church board or the building committee or whoever needs to act on it. It was acted on by we. We started in this process in the fall of 17 when a building committee was appointed, and the first thing we did was hire Wally Cordes as a contractor on a part-time basis to put together a budget for the project. He was to contact contractors, suppliers, get estimates and bids and so forth, which he did. And we'll come back a bit later and see how that worked. Early on in the project, we discovered that even though our assignment was to finish the upstairs of this building, there were some things hooked to it that had to be done in order to ultimately qualify for a CO or a permit of occupancy. And that involved the parking lot and the partitions that should be hanging, the collapsible partitions that someday will be hanging here, and a couple of other minor things. So that set us back a little bit, and some thought some of those items ought not to be included because they were really maintenance issues. But there wasn't any money in the maintenance fund, so we didn't have the option of putting them there, and they ended up as part of this project, and that's okay. We're going to get it done. Along the way, we decided that we were going to do this project on an owner-builder basis. You either do it that way or you do it on what just is called a turnkey contract basis. And since we have folks of experience in our church, we decided to do it on an owner-builder basis. We, at that point, upped Wally to full-time as a hands-on contractor and added Keith Ayers as a hands-on contractor And I was authorized to represent the church essentially as the owner. But believe me, I'm willing to give it back. Anyway, we set this up and organized it, and I need to say that Wayne Schoonover, who was our finance chairman, and Penny Brewer, our treasurer, helped us get this organized in a way that we could get our accounting done expeditiously and in a way that we could hire these contractors. And what we did is we hired their labor, or we contracted for their labor, and authorized Wally, in addition, to be our purchasing agent, so to speak, and set up an accounting office to make this all work. And it has worked very, very smoothly. And we have accomplished a lot. So at our March meeting, which has already been referred to, we approved taking out a loan. And I want to just explain that a bit. We had some resistance to borrowing more money. And you've just heard our financial report, and I think we can all understand why there would be resistance to that. However, as we got into putting the financial plan together and the budget and so forth, we discovered that during the 4 years that this sat idle, the cost of completing it, because of some code changes and material increases and so forth, had increased by about $50,000 a year. So to pursue it on a pay-as-you-go basis, so to speak, would have just constantly increased the cost, and probably we wouldn't even have been able to catch up to the goalpost, so to speak. And all the while this was happening, the building would be, the upstairs would be sitting empty. We did the math and learned that if we borrowed $500,000, we could do the project, and the interest rate is 4%. So that's an added cost of $20,000 a year. You got to pay for the building one way or another. So it seemed to us that an added cost of $20,000 a year and having the facility available to use was quite a bit better than facing a $50,000 increase a year and having it sitting empty. So that was what you call a no-brainer. We put together a financial plan, and Wally's budget came in at about, in round figures, $1,080,000. Of that amount, the part that was involved with finishing this building and correcting the issues that I mentioned in the parking lot and so forth, in round figures, came to $750,000. The other parts of it, the parking lot, so forth, came to about $300,000 to $330,000. And the total then being the $1,080,000. We had at that time on hand about $250,000. Part of that had been raised by a group that was interested in the elevator and was raising money, I think about $85,000. And then there were a couple of special gifts. And so with the 250 on hand and a 500,000 loan, we would meet the goal of the $750,000 that was needed. It was assumed at that time, and my understanding, that of the remaining amount, the fundraising committee would raise the $300,000 to $330,000, bringing us up to the total of $1,080,000. So that plan was approved, and we moved ahead. We had our organization, we had our authorization, and ready to go. So we, based on the money we had on hand, Wally and Keith went to work with preparatory work, doing some of the electrical wiring that needed to be done, et cetera, excuse me. And the loan was approved, and we had access to the funds, I think sometime in May of last year. So we were into it, ready to go full bore in June of last year. Well, the steel stud contractors didn't show up, and we learned that we needed some more engineering done on a couple of things. There were a couple of other little issues, and I think, as I have reported to the congregation previously, there simply was a shortage of people to do the work, and it pretty much stopped us. We lost probably 3 months of time. But before the holidays, it picked up. People began to be available. Some of these other projects or problems that I mentioned, fortunately, occurred simultaneously rather than one after the other, so otherwise we'd have lost more time. So before the holidays, things got going. We got the elevator shaft and elevator equipment room finished and ready for the elevator people to start putting their stuff in. After the holidays, we finally got the steel stud work finished, and Wally and Keith then were able to finish up the rough-in electrical and plumbing and some other minor stuff that needed to be done. And about mid-January, I suspect it was, the sheetrockers showed up and went gangbusters for a while and then disappeared. Kind of let us down. But we understand they're going to be back next week, and probably we'll finish hanging the rock and probably come close to finishing the taping. So what do we have left to do? After the sheetrock is up and finished, the next thing is painting. Keith and Wally are going to do that. After that comes the ceiling grid and the bathroom and floor tile. And those two things can go simultaneously. And then we have to install all the fixtures. And Keith and Wally will put in the light fixtures, bathroom fixtures, door hardware, etc. And the last thing is the floor covering. And then we're done. So at this point, it looks pretty good. We got it all in line, ducks all in a row, as they say, and ready to wind it up. Coming back to the budget, I'm happy to tell you that this work I just mentioned, that to finish up the upstairs, and we've already done the outside stuff, and so that's finished. Finishing up the upstairs, everything involved is under contract, so we know what our cost is going to be. We've done our math, we've checked it twice, and I'm just happy to say that unless something totally unpredictable pops up, which it could, we're aiming to finish this up by late April and within budget. Now that's unusual. And we just hope you'll join your prayers with ours that will happen. Another thing that you should know is somewhere along the line, we had to decide what the order of construction would be. And I was anxious to get that parking lot paved, but as we talked about it, Keith Ayers, who's kind of quiet most of the time, spoke up and said, you know, what we really need to do and what we really need to do as priority is finish the upstairs and take care of those little problems outside and be sure that we can apply for a CO before we run out of money and get the CO, and in his words, get the county off our back, and then we can do the other things as we're able. Well, how did that turn out? If you want to know how something really works, ask Keith, because he was spot on. The fact is, if we had done the parking lot first, it would have been nice, but right now we'd be running out of money. And then we would be trying to raise money and get that finished. So that has worked out very well. I feel, in spite of some of the setbacks and disappointments that we've had, we have certainly seen the Lord's hand in this. The owner-operator thing, how did that work? Worked very well. As I mentioned, Wayne and Penny helped us work out a system of handling our finances, made the accounting very meaningful, and it also enabled us to pay the contractors as contractors so that everything was legal and efficient. And I can tell you that Steve and Keith and Wally are just two great guys. And having them available to fill in the cracks and do a lot of the work as we went along, I'm convinced saved us many thousands of dollars and a lot of time and maybe a couple of headaches. Great guys to work with. It worked very, very smoothly. And I'm happy to report, too, that up to now, at least, and I see no reason for a change. We've had a very good relationship with the county, and Wally has been on top of getting the inspections done, and as far as I can see, that has been a very cordial relationship. Yeah, there's some stuff that we'd rather not do, but hey, it's required, so we do it. And generally, it's gone very well, and I think we've enjoyed the highest quality of workmanship as well. So I'm very grateful for all of that. And I think I've already told the story about the elevator at church. But just to mention again, it was like a miracle. Wally called numerous elevator companies, and they were busy and didn't even return our calls. And all of a sudden, one of them did return our call. And it happened that they're the ones we are working with. They have been most good to deal with, timely, cooperative, and I see that as definitely the hand of the Lord guiding us along. And I could go on and tell more stories about that, but I'm just very pleased that we are where we are, and we see a pretty good future ahead of us. Thank you so much. Did someone have a question? That's correct. That's correct. Well, I don't know that anything was necessarily allocated to the parking lot. It was allocated, the money was allocated to the project. And when we set the priorities, we chose to spend the money here first to accomplish what I explained. And yes, no, there will be some funds for the parking lot, but the rest of the parking lot money is what needs to be raised by the 2020 vision. So that was not necessarily allocated, but yes, the parking lot will come next. And I hope that we can get that done this coming summer, because if we don't, it'll be another year. So anyway, I think maybe Reg will have some answers on that. Thank you.
Well, aren't you excited about talking about money and hearing about money? I have a nice little program all set for you, but I think you don't want to hear it. I told Shirley I'd start off with the story of the widow's mite. She said, "Oh, don't do that. Everybody knows that," and they'll just close their minds right there, so I won't mention that. There are about 8 points that have to do with generosity. I think many of you have shown that you're very generous. 27 families have been involved in this according to our statistics. And if you haven't been one of those 27, well, I want to encourage you to give. There's been some very excellent gifts, very steady gifts. We're well on our way to making our goal. And if you see to the left side of the door back there, that chart, you can see that we're moving up. And that means that all of the collective steady giving is adding up. That last chart was at 300,000, and now it'll be at 476,000, which is nice progress. That's not the total amount of cash, but those are our pledges. I'm going to give you a couple of examples because I found them when I was preparing this to be very interesting and not perhaps something you thought of. A generous person may give as a byproduct of their own personal transformation. And the one that comes to mind there is Zacchaeus. Remember? He was a tax guy, and he'd done a little of this, I think, in his job as a tax collector. And he was converted, and when he was transformed, and he was generous. I mean, really generous. You think about him, and you think about another little thing. The little kid in Matthew 14 that came with a prepared lunch. His mother made a lunch for him, and he had a couple of fishes and some bread, and he was all set for his lunch. And you think about him. I don't know whether he was 12 or 18, but he came with a lunch. And his generosity was reflected in his willingness to give up his meal. And by giving up his meal, many, many thousands of people were fed by Jesus. So those are just two quick examples of generosity. And generosity can be something that's a strain for some, and for some it's spontaneous. We all know people that are just always giving. Konimi comes to mind. Shirley was sick with a bad shoulder and couldn't cook. I was barely getting along. And Konimi came over and brought up meals several nights, two, 3 times a week. Generous person. So we're hoping that generosity spreads in our church. We have really a lot of very positive attitudes towards giving. I've contacted a number of you, and you've said sure, and you've given. The 2020 brochure that we had made up is a very nice thing to talk to anybody about. You may want to take a look at that. If you haven't given, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands of those who haven't given, but if you haven't, take a look at that brochure, and those are available, I'm sure, at the office, and fill one out and send it in. Now, the real convenient thing about it is that you can get online at home on your computer, or you can, with your phone, get online and easily plan a giving program. You and your significant other can sit there and decide what you're going to give, and then automatically it comes out of your credit card, and at the end of your 2 years of giving, there's enough frequent flyer bonus points there for you to go take a trip somewhere. I mean, it's pretty nice, and there's no 5% taken out by the bank with that system that's on AdventistGiving.org. So keep that in mind. Just to go over this, you have this in your hand, so you've already looked at it. The cash, we received a nice gift of $100,000 just before Christmas, or just after Christmas, and that swells our effort to progress. So if you're one of the 27, thank you for your contribution. We're headed towards completion, and I have a chance to walk up the stairs and look through the place. You know, the reason that this place was conceived of in the first place, we talked about this on our fundraising committee, is get the worship all in one place. Have the kids upstairs in our rooms. We're having our other Sabbath school classes in other rooms. The families that bring their kids in and usually leave for a little while and come and get them again don't have to, because there's going to be a place where they can have a cup of coffee or relax or enjoy themselves up in that corner at the top. We've got enough of a social setting that's really unique. Some of the people from Marshall Hospital that came over here during our Amen Clinic were amazed. You know, I told them we have a really nice place. I couldn't think of an excuse when I was working there as Chief Medical Officer to get our meetings here, because we went to some really dumb places right in the county that were not good for having meetings. And we have this beautiful building here, but we didn't have those rooms finished. We always have breakout sessions. So here we have it now. And those people from Marshall that saw this said, wow, you've got a wonderful place. It's beautiful. And I said, well, take that back, because I'm not on those committees anymore. And if anybody wants to use this place, you certainly can. It's for lease. And those are options to help cover our costs. So getting it finished is going to be very helpful, and we're happy to have real good progress upstairs. The elevator is hiding because it's finished, and you can't push the button until it's until we have some reason to go up there. But those of you that don't have easy ability to walk upstairs, that elevator is going to be operational for you. And we want to make a tour of it. Probably it'll be a part of a church service. When the service is over and we got that ready, we can have fun going up there and looking around. But the kids will be up there. You can develop those rooms. I know Brandon Carnes had some really neat ideas of how to make very exciting children's Sabbath school rooms. And that's going to happen now with those new rooms available. Air conditioning's in already. Beautiful, big, spacious rooms. We're looking forward to enjoying them. So are there any questions about fundraising, or anybody that wants to donate right now? We would be glad to receive a donation. That's not what I'm up here for, but yes. Make sure you use that AdventistGiving.org. That's a very nice way to do it and benefit the church as well as this building. So thank you. Any questions? Thank you for your participation.
We're going to do a little house cleaning here. Thank you, Nathan. You can. I know it's late, so for the sake of time, I thought it'd be better just to revisit this whole conversation in the year 2020. So, no, just, sorry, guess it's not that easy. But for the sake of time, it's about a 90-minute PowerPoint presentation, so just stick with it. First thing first, just John Daggett has volunteered for this portion of the meeting to be parliamentarian. So is there a motion to be entertained from the floor, or somebody who would make that motion? So moved. Is there a second? Larry Ballou made the second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. You're it, John, so thank you. So I want to take some time to talk about the organizational structure, kind of give you a summary of what it is right now, currently, as far as what it was in the past as well and where it came from. So we have the church board, the current church board, and the ministry management team. But I want to reflect on a little bit of where we were in the past. So back in 2016, our church board, which was basically what is now the ministry management team, was comprised of a board chair and ministry leaders, and at that time it was a board of around 23 members. I think our board has been, at that when it was the, quote, ministry leads and a board chair, has been anywhere from around 18 to 26 members, depending on who all serves at the time. This board is made up of people serving passionately while managing the month-to-month business of the church. However, when you have 23 people, it causes some constraints as far as taking a lot of time for every meeting to move on and cast a forward vision. So even though it was made up of very passionate people, I served on that board for 3 or 4 years, it had limited time to reach its full potential. I got these quotes from business leaders, business management leaders, and who also were leaders and written a lot of books on organizational structures. On effective organizational leadership teams, members are not there simply to represent the departments that they lead and manage, but rather to solve problems that stand in the way of achieving success for the entire organization. So you can see what limitations were placed on having a 23-member board that was made up mostly of ministry leads. For example, and there's nothing wrong with this, it's just the nature of human beings. When you come to a meeting and you represent your ministry and you're asked to go over the year-end budget and make cuts, it's difficult to make cuts for your ministry that you represent. So you're not necessarily making opinions or suggestions or votes based on the good for the entire organization. You're there to represent your ministry. So another quote that I got online, A leadership team is a small group of people who are collectively responsible for achieving a common objective for the entire organization. The key I got out of there is a small group, because it talks about some of the limitations when you have a 23-member team. Many leadership teams struggle simply because they are too large. A leadership team should be made up of somewhere between 3 and 12 people, though anything over 8 or 9 can be problematic. And the primary problem has to do with communication. There are 2 critical types of communication: advocacy and inquiry. Advocacy is the part about stating your opinion or stating your position, making your case. Inquiry, as though, is the most critical part, because that's the part that leads to a much deeper conversation that gets to the point where you can really bring out the truth, and based on that can make better decisions. But although it's more important than advocacy, it doesn't happen very often. It can be very rare on large groups. The reason being is because you don't know when you're going to get your floor time again. And I think the next slide talks about that. So what does that have to do with the effective size of a leadership team? When there are more than 8 or 9 people on a team, members tend to advocate more than they ask questions. Members aren't confident that they're going to get the opportunity to speak again soon, so they worry about their scarce floor time, and they use that time to make their point or state their opinion or position. On the right-sized team, members are more likely to use much of their time asking questions, seeking clarity, confident that they will regain the opportunity to share their opinions again. The proof in point, especially lately, think about the U.S. institution of the U.S. Congress, 435 people. That's daunting to get your floor time, and when you have that floor time, it's very important. And what happens is congressmen start taking that time to make their opinion. It's opinion upon opinion where they're making their declarations and their statements. Much less time is spent on really having those in-depth conversations, which again leads to greater truth, to have some better decisions that made out of that. So I want to talk about what happens when you have a small team versus large team communication patterns. So let's talk about a 5-member team. That's pretty small. Remember we talked about the effective size, or have anything from 5 to 12, somewhere in there. So let's look at a 5-team communication pattern. Not too daunting. It's pretty basic. You have 5 members who are going to share communication back and forth. But now let's look at a 12-member team communication pattern. Becomes a little bit busier, a little more daunting. Our current board is 9 people. We fit somewhere in between those two, in that small little empty blue space. But think about visualizing what a 23-member team looks like when you have the same type of communication pattern. And that why, when you have 23 members, what happens is you tend to deal with the month-to-month business. And I go back to those meetings that I served on, and again, I was so impressed to serve with the people that I did, because these were people who passionately were serving for their ministries, and we had some really long meetings. We went through some stressful times. We got a lot of stuff done, but we didn't have time to really visualize our vision for the future and do some things that would help us accomplish our mission of moving people closer to God. So if you look at the little pyramid on the left, these are kind of things of what we discussed, and I want you to realize where this 9-member board came out of. It didn't come to us from an outside source. It wasn't some speaker that came in and said, you guys are doing this all wrong. I suggest you go with a 9-member team. All these conversations took place on that 23-member board. What came out of that board is the 9-member board. So it came out internally with conversations from those people who were very passionate, who were currently serving on the then board. So what we thought about, or what we talked about, was the importance, first of all, foremost, at the base of all this, is building a group that was built on trust. Because when you trust one another, when you love one another, you're more open to disagree, to share dissenting views, which again creates better dialogue and to get that deeper information that you need to make better decisions. Because you trust one another, you're able to work through conflict. You commit to making decisions and moving forward, and you hold each other accountable. Hey, where were you? You haven't been at some of the meetings. Or you said you were going to do this, it didn't happen. Why? It all goes back to that base, because it's all built on trust. And again, you focus on achieving the goal, the greater good of the organization that you represent, not necessarily just the ministry that you lead. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea, and these are just me, briefly describing kind of why I'm so happy to be with the people that I serve with now. Describes our church board. A cohesive team built on vulnerability-based trust, where we say and mean genuinely things like, I messed up, I need help, your idea is better than mine, and even, I'm sorry. Now, this is going to be a little bit transparent here. I'm just going to share something because the board members will know what I'm talking about. Our last board meeting, which was not too long ago, was 3 hours long. That was me. I had to say all those things because I had had a misinterpretation of something that happened at a previous meeting. But I felt okay with doing that because I knew within that room I was loved. So I had to apologize to the group. And then afterwards, the person and I that had the biggest disagreement, biggest difference of opinions, I stayed around to tell him that thank you. Because he embraced what that team was made up to be. He embraced the fact that we value the conflict. It's positive conflict. It moves us forward to having those kind of conversations. And I thanked him for actually putting that out there and pushing back a little bit, as well as I apologized for my misunderstanding. So we embrace the positive tension and we work through the conflict, like I had said. We value everyone's opinion, even those with dissenting views, because in the dissenting views, there's a lot of learning and growth in that. One of the things I do since I took over as board chair is when there's a new person that joins the board, I make sure that they understand that their opinion is valuable, even as a new member. And if you feel like you're in disagreement, you're just not totally on board, don't sit on your hands, because it is good for all of us to hear that. It can actually change the direction of the conversation. We value everybody's opinion. And we seek to follow where God is leading and focus on the overall mission of, I put up there, our church, of his church, and moving others closer to God. This is going to be a little tough for me to read from here. So this is the question, what it's worth to you. This is the question that board back in 2016, as we were going through this process of evaluating what we could do to be better, what we could do better to better serve you, and what we could do to be better at reaching God's mission of moving people closer to God for this church. So we had to ask ourselves, what is it worth to us? So imagine a leadership team whose members generally trust and care about one another, who have the time to ask questions and gain clarity, who believe they are engaged in something so important that they are compelled at times to disagree, sometimes passionately, when seeing things differently, who hold each other accountable and focus their attention on the collective good of the organization, and who have the time not only to deal with the month-to-month business of the church, but also the time to cast a vision, to work on future means of achieving its mission, moving others closer to God. So now, this is that time of the meeting where we simply get to ask you that question. What's it worth to you? So I prepared some people for this moment because I thought this is the time I want to step out and be Ron Smith. I want to take off my hat as your board chair. This doesn't represent the board, and nor does it represent the pastoral staff. But for those of you that have been here previous years to 2016, and who have been with us through these growing times, and there has been a lot of growth and learning while being on the board. But I want you to think about when you're looking to answer this question on whether or not you're happy with the current structure or you're not happy with the current structure, and ask yourself, why? And is it based on just the decisions that have come out of the board? Because I'll tell you, the decisions that come out of the board, although we feel, prayerfully, we feel we are following where God is leading us. Because a lot of decisions that we have made are not made for the benefit of self. There's been a lot of things that we decided to do that hasn't been the best decision for what I thought would be for me. But I do think that when we step out of self and we step into the life or step into the lives of others, that's when God shows up in a big time. So if you're not happy with the decisions that have come out of the board, it doesn't mean that those decisions wouldn't have been reached by the 23-member board. So I don't think you can put your hat on that. And then I want you to think about, okay, I'm not happy with the decisions. Why am I not happy with the decisions? And again, this is me. This is me. Because as board chair, people will come up and tell you why I'm not happy. And it's not a frustration for me. It's just that I wish you could see things a little bit different because I think you're missing something. So when you tell me I'm not happy with the music, it's not my music. I'm not happy that we're no longer in the sanctuary because that's not my place of worship. God doesn't ask us to come to church to be a consumer. God asks us to come to church to be a connector, to be a contributor, to move people closer to God. So I've always told people when you're hearing some music and it's not your music, it's not what you were raised with, it's not what you're familiar with, think about how maybe God's timing is impeccable. Maybe God is using that music to reach a 15-year-old young lady who's going through tough times at home, who's never been in church. Let that be your blessing. If we all came to church where we're thinking about, I exist for you. I exist for you. I exist for all of you. I exist for you. And you exist for me, but I don't demand that because that's self-serving love. But it creates a different dynamic. There's many times when I'm back here in the kitchen. Fortunately, Daisy and the crew allow me to be back there, but I don't touch much because I'll mess it up. But when I'm back there, I can sometimes escape a little bit, and I'll lean against that wall because I love watching our praise team, and I love watching the youth. Is it my music? No. If it was my music, it'd be Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith, and not many people want to hear that. But I sit back there, and what I look at, what I see is some youth, and I see them smiling, but they're not smiling because we're not giving them celebrity kind of status. A lot of us aren't quite really all that engaged, but they're glowing. And why are they glowing? They're glowing because they're, I get emotional. They're glowing because they're praising their Savior. And I think you miss something when you get caught up in it's not my music, because you tend to miss the real blessing that is right there in front of all of you to see. So when you tell me you feel like you've got a responsibility, I've got a responsibility to teach the youth pastor, to teach these youth how they should appropriately dress when they're up front. No, that's not the responsibility. But I think the responsibility is to talk to your peer group who is feeling that way, to tell them, no, when you see young people, unchurched, previously unchurched young people, that because of Leif and his ministry, he has brought them to the point that they're volunteering to share and praise their Savior and glow up here in front of you. Enjoy that moment. Enjoy that. So that's just me. I'm sorry. I just thank you for the time. I just wanted to step out. Hold me accountable for that. Talk to me about that. Don't hold the church board accountable. Don't hold our pastoral staff accountable for that. That's just me. So thank you for taking the time, for listening. As we move forward, are there any questions about the current board structure and the motion on the floor that we're going to vote about this evening? It is on there. I could read it if someone could find it for me real quick. I'm sorry, I meant to have that. So here's the motion. Recommendation to approve the current organizational structure with the church board and the ministry management team. Is everybody clear on that? Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Yes.
This is still a temporary situation.
Not currently as this is read. Remember back in 2016 we made the decision. We voted in 2017 to have and try the 9-member board. We came here in 2018 again to approve that 9-member board, and it was amended to evaluate that a year later, which brings it to this space.
It was an annual thing.
Correct. That was to bring it back to this space where now we had the year thing, so we're here to vote now. It is currently read as to approve that. Doesn't mean you can't ever revisit the organizational structure. You can do that at any time if the church that wants to do that in a business meeting. But here we're to vote to just approve it unless it's amended. Now again, I'm going to give you my personal opinion. That it's a little daunting for a board to work under knowing that every year we might be changed. And I'll tell you why. Because currently we have people that have been nominated by the nominating committee. So God has led them to seek these people and ask them if they want to serve. They've been called, and they've said they'll step into that fear, and they will serve to be part of this board. But because of this meeting tonight, they have not been elected or voted in by the church to serve because the nominating committee felt, and it makes sense, why ask them to serve officially if we possibly could tonight say we're going to do away from the board. But if you follow that logic, people on the board are intended to serve on a 3-year term. So if you follow that logic, why ask anybody to serve for 3 years knowing we're going to revisit this every year? You're not really there to fulfill your 3-year term. So that's just my personal thing, is it makes it easier to function as a leadership team when you don't always have this over your head. It allows us to build better trust, knowing I'm with you with the duration of this. I'm with you with the duration of these 3 years. I'm going to get to know you and get to know you deeply because it adds to those conversations and we work through the conflict and we get better decision-making process that comes out of that. I don't control it though, so yes.
If you ask somebody to be on the board, doesn't mean that they're not going to be on the board if the board changes.
Correct, but I'm just telling you I'm following the logic of the current nominating committee that has people that have accepted to be on the board right now, but has not voted them in front of church, because why ask them to serve when right now we're going to have the vote of maybe ending the 9-member board? So if you follow that logic and you asking people to serve, even if we vote tonight that we're going to continue this for a year, and you ask people to serve, you're asking them to serve for a 3-year term, but hey, in a year, I'm going to tell you if you're going to come off the board because it might not be there. That's just me.
We're always going to have a board.
No, not if you vote to end it.
If you end the 9-member.
Correct. That's correct. That's correct.
14-member or 23, then they're still going to be.
Robert, Bob, it's partially correct because the 23-member board is currently made up of ministry leads. It's the MMT. So you could then, I don't know how that would happen. Gail would have to help me with that, the leadership team. You now are adding 9 more people to that board because they're not ministry leads. The reason why they're not ministry leads is purposeful. Because if you're not a ministry lead, you vote and make decisions for the good of the entire organization. If you're a ministry lead, you represent those ministries. So that if you join the ministry management team and merge it with another 9 people, you now could dauntingly have possibly 30-some people on the board. So not all those people would probably fit into that category. Does that make sense? I'm speaking off the hip right now because that hasn't happened. So Gail would have to help me with that, or the current board would probably have to help me with that. But that's what I imagine. You can't, we don't have ministry leads on the board currently. So not sure if they would follow right back on the board. But again, you determine this, not me. This is you. I'm just Ron Smith up here. You guys determine this. I don't determine it. Yes?
Could you just explain to me what
As the motion is currently read, a yes vote means that we continue the current structure, having a 9-member board and also the ministry management team, which I think, Julie, are you here? 18 people? 17 people on the board. Well, I'm on that board, but I don't vote, I don't do. Correct. Correct. It's part of the process. Well, okay. Let me go over that structure because there is some confusion, maybe. Yes.
May I have some clarification? Has there been a motion actually submitted yet?
Well, this was the motion that came out of the. This was the motion that came out of the board that was voted and seconded and voted. Yes, well, I guess I haven't submitted in front of the meeting. That's why I don't know if I should have, because it was voted in board, I don't know if we needed to vote on it here. It's a motion. Does that make sense? It could be amended from the floor. Well, do we, although it was seconded on the board?
No, we would need a second here. The board.
Okay, so we could do that, so I apologize. This is where you get me. So, again, this motion reads, I'll read it again and ask if we have a second from the floor. Recommendation to approve the current organizational structure with the church board and Pam, and also the ministry management team. So it's both acting boards. Is there a second to that? John Adams? Okay, so now, so that's officially a motion on the floor.
Chairman?
Yes.
Could I ask that the microphone be used for this conversation? I see a dialogue going here, and I think we need to have more structure to this conversation.
Okay, so let's do this. There are mics up front, so if you'd like to ask a question, you can come up and use the mics. Nathan and Denise are also here to help answer questions, so if you have questions or any other issues, you're welcome to use the microphone and come up front.
One of the things we should motion is not have me speak at all. Okay, on a scale from 0 to 10, how do you feel this 9-member board and the 17-member ministry management team is working this year, from a scale from 0 to 10 compared to the last 50 years of doing church?
Can I answer that? I get pretty transparent. We're not perfect. As much as I wanted to join a perfect board, the minute I joined it, it was imperfect. So one of the anchors that we anchored as we were part of that 23-member ministry management team, and we were talking about going into this 9-member board, and a lot of you that are sitting out there now were part of that board. I see the faces. We talked about an anchor point, which was hinging on that we wanted to communicate with clarity, consistently up front. So there's been a piece that's, as we've been working through this, of being better with the communication to you, and then internally, from one committee to the next committee to the next committee, so when things come to the board, we have that communication. So there's been some adjustments. So I'll tell you, so one of the things that I did, and Denise did as well, it's nothing new, but when I took over as board chair, I thought, okay, we get the minutes from all these committees, but sometimes the minutes doesn't explain everything in detail. So I decided to go ahead and I attend facilities. I attend building committee. I attend MMT. I attend finance. I now attend EAS school board. That was my fault. Should have been doing that a long time ago. It just was somehow off of campus, out of mind, and I apologize to both the board and to Gail Norton that I wasn't there. But now I'm starting to attend that. And part of the reason why is so when things come up at the board in these minutes and there's a question, there's some clarity. So can we improve on all that? Absolutely. So we're better now than we were at the beginning. We're not perfect people, but we have a desire to serve and to get better as we go through this, and we work through things, and that's what we're doing. So,
just and to give you a number, because I like numbers too, I would put this current story, I've served on both. I think I was 3 or 4 years in the other system and a couple years on this. I would say with where we are now, I would put it about a 7 or 8 out of 10. I mean, it's not perfect, it's good. I would have put us at about a 3 in the other one. The inefficiency was amazingly slow. We wasted so much time. The level of discussion was, I would put like, you know, the 20th percentile as far as how in depth you could go in a conversation. I would say that that is incredibly deeper with what we are now. And as Ron said, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to agree with what we decide, but that's has nothing to do with the structure. That has to do with just you may not agree with the people on the board. Talk to the nominating committee, get the people on the board that you think need to be on the board. That's really where the structure that we're currently following plays into.
Ron, is that good? Okay. Fred? Wally, we good here? Yeah.
First, I'd like to say it is working? Okay. I really appreciate your attitude, Ron. You have your personal feelings, we all do, but you seem to be very reasonable as far as working with people.
You can sit down now. That's enough.
I'm sure there's a lot of good things that have come from this committee, but I'm going to express two things that have come to my attention that seem to be negative. One of them could be, as you mentioned, a result of decisions.
Understand.
The other one probably is not decision-related. It's come to my attention the last few months that I've been working on the nominating committee. I've talked to a lot of people about different things, and they've had different things expressed to me. One item from two different people that are in very important jobs in the church, that the second committee, what do we call them now? The
Ministry management.
Ministry management and the church board being two separate committees, they have to pass both of these in order to accomplish a certain task. And it slows down because they don't meet every day. They meet once a month, and sometimes it doesn't get on the agenda. So sometimes somebody wants to accomplish something, and it takes months to get this done. One committee once a month, and I'm not, but this is an issue that's come to me by two different people that I feel hold really important jobs in the church. So this would be a negative in my opinion. The second one is, and this may be decision related, but I've seen throughout, and it's been expressed to me verbally, and I've seen it just in people's faces, many of them who are not here tonight, a disenfranchisement because someone else is making decisions they believe they should be part of. I think most of us can see that. If you haven't been able to see that yet, I think you haven't opened your eyes. There's a great deal of that. And maybe that's decision related, I don't know. But I do know that I think we need to be a whole church and not this church and this group and this group. And I think in order to accomplish that, the group that's here tonight, not the 9 members, not the 17 members, the 120 people that are here tonight or the 250 that show up, whatever, these people need to make the decisions.
Absolutely.
On which direction our church goes. And based on that, my only suggestion is, in a short period of time here, that perhaps we should have a strategic board or committee, whatever you want to call them, and an operational committee. Obviously, the ministry management is operational. They're all heads of different departments. They have issues or things that need to be taken care of immediately or soon or in the future. That's operational. That has to be done regardless of which way we want to go with our church, if we want to go this way or that way. And then there's somebody that needs to take care of some planning and some future. And I think possibly we need a committee, whatever you want to call them, that says, how about let's try this way, and bring it as a suggestion to the church and have the church decide, yes, we want to go that way. Instead of a small group saying, we're going this way, hope you like it.
Yeah, thank you, Fred.
Maybe a different kind of structure than we have now.
Yeah, Nathan, a couple things, because I'm old and I'll forget where I was going to go on that and I'll be lost. But a couple things. If it's a matter of, because it is too, that we meet, all these committees meet once a month. So it could sometimes be the timing of one committee, and by the time another committee meets, maybe it's not quick enough, and that's they need their response sooner. The nice thing about a smaller board, however, is there's been many times where either Denise or myself or Gail have got to send out an email vote. It's a pretty simple process. We might get something from Penny. We got to send out an email, but from Wayne, tuition assistance. One of the students would like to go. We need a little bit more. We can easily do that on the run with an email vote with 9 people and get responses back quickly. A little more difficult with a larger group. So I don't know if that helps, Fred, wherever you went back to, but that's as far as, there is some difficulty with meeting once a month, but that does help. The other thing is all about the communication piece. It's all about that. So again, I'll just share, I'll be transparent. So when we made the decision as a board to move from the sanctuary to here, we talked about that a long time. Some very in-depth conversations. And we got to that place we felt this is where God was leading us. It's time to make this move. I learned personally big time, and I'm not going to pull people out and tell who, but somebody, and I'm just so impressed by the fact that she did, came to our board and shared her heart as to what that did, that decision. And it hurt because I started thinking about, I was part of a team that made a decision that hurt one person's worship experience. That's hard to be part of that. But what I learned in that was that piece about communicating consistently with clarity up front. And although we had been involved in those conversations for a long period of time, we didn't do our due diligence about bringing everybody else along with us as to the why we felt that we're there. Is everybody always going to be happy with every decision that we make? I wish it was. That would be my dream, but that's just not going to happen. So in an attempt to make that communication better, there is a lot of wisdom in this room. There is a lot of wisdom in the members of our church. And so some of you have wanted to meet with you and have made suggestions, which makes a lot of sense, that some of the people that serve on ministry management team aren't necessarily ministries. There's finance, and there's facilities, and there's currently building committee. Those really aren't ministries. So Gail and I have had some conversations. What do we do? What do we do with that? I think maybe they could report directly to the board, but now we become a 12-member team. Okay, you saw the pictures, what happens when you go from 5 to 12. It gets a little more daunting. Could we do that? Yeah. Or do we start to make those positions as ones that those are board positions? If you are a facilities chair, you're a board position as well. If you're a finance chair, you're a board position as well, and then we fill around that to make up the 9. I don't know, but we're listening. We're listening so much that I talked to another person who was here tonight and said that I know there's some people who don't feel good about the music and some things. So can you get a group of people together? Because I want to meet with them. I want to communicate. I want to listen. Because again, in dissenting views, there's learning and there's growth. And I mentioned there's a lot of wisdom out there because that person had so much wisdom who thought about it, was going to plan that, was going to make the connections and get that meeting. And that person pulled me aside and said, you know what? I think right now that might just cause a little more dissension than the positives we get out of that. So let's just wait. I value that. I want to meet with the youth because our youth, they're not here now, really, that I can tell, but there's a lot of value in what our youth want to suggest. So I think it would be great to meet with the youth, to hear their ideas, to bring it back to the board. And I told this to Leonard, and Leonard had a great suggestion. Why not take a youth position, they're non-voting, but put them on the ministry management team or put them on a board so they can kind of get mentored and get an idea of what that's all about. So as they get older and they're hit with somebody, call them and say, would you like to be on the board? Yeah, I know what that's all about. I think that's a great idea. So Leonard, thank you for that. We're talking about that at the board now as maybe, can we do that? But anyway, so thank you. Larry.
By the way, I like the music. I love the music Sabbath at church. It was wonderful. With all due respect, Fred, to you and to those that have spoke to you, I've had people also speak to me as chairman of the ministry management team. Our meetings are productive, and we meet the week before the board, and I believe that our minutes are timely. Julie gets them out. They get to the board the very next week. The feedback has been positive, and I'd just like to answer Ron's question. I'd give it an 8 or a 9, just simply because we always go out from our meetings, feel like we've covered our bases and been able to save actually the board probably some time by making a recommendation. Everything that we vote needs to be ratified by the board. We understand that, but we still feel like our meetings are productive and effective.
Thank you, Larry.
MMT, Ministry Management Team, and I was told that the board was to present the direction of the church. Pastor's been preaching on service, and one thing that I feel like failed, and because, yes, it's my team, is that Child Connect got voted out of this church.
Okay.
I don't think that's a very good organizational
Okay,
structure.
and I might need some help answering some of this because I'm not part of all this conversation. I'm not part of, I think that was part of that happened before I was board chair, so sitting on all these committees didn't quite happen, so I didn't have all the in-depth of the beginnings, but I can tell you part of that, and again, I value that, and obviously what I have to look at is your perception and where you're from, and that's hurtful, and we can all see that, so I value that, and obviously there was something wrong with how you felt you were treated. Apologies. But we didn't ever vote out a ministry, and I've had some, because I had some conversations with you, Jeanette, directly about what, and again, I was not voting at these committees, but was there to attend to try to learn, catching this at the back end of how things were going with Child Connect. And I don't know if it's really appropriate even to identify in this space, but I want to try to as best I can. So I fully believe that God has a plan, and God's timing is impeccable. So I know there were issues here with Child Connect here and conflicting with Bayside, and they felt about safety issues. And so how we tried to make appropriate changes to have you meet here when they weren't in service, but your team didn't want to do that. So then it was offered by Bayside to move to Bayside's campus. So while they were here, you could be their meeting and do that, which worked out for a while, but then obviously their buildings, I guess, when they weren't kept up. So we had to find kind of a temporary home. And I told you that I was talking to Leonard, I was talking to people to try to find that temporary home, and I fully believed God would provide. And then you called me and said Camino had given you a home. And I was like, thank you. God's provided a temporary home. I think I looked at that, and it could just be me. I looked at that, that's a temporary home because God's going to provide something as a permanent location. And now I look at where we are now. Bayside's gone. God will provide. So I don't remember, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember any of the ministry management team or the church board ever having a vote that said, we want to get rid of, or we want to stop, to the point of I attended the ministry management team, Julie's there, later and had some difficulty with what had happened because I was under the understanding that going to Camino was a temporary home, not now that it's now Camino's ministry. And it opened up a box of, okay, does that mean ministry leads own the ministry and they can take the ministry and go wherever they want? Or is the ministry lead here serving our church and our community as the Placerville Church serving under that ministry? I don't have that answer. I just proposed the question at the time. So if anybody else has a different understanding or more knowledge about what happened, please let me know. If there was an actual vote somewhere that voted a ministry out of the church, I'd like to know. I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, Rosemary? Please.
My name's Rosemary, and I work with Child Connect, currently working up at the Camino facility because that's who opened their doors to us. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Jeanette, but we felt like we didn't have the doors opened to us here. We were aware that Bayside was leaving in the fall. We got notified by Bayside that they were not going to be here for 2019. We knew that in, was it September, end of August? While we were trying to find a place, because they were kicking us out, we had to be somewhere by October. I think what's hurtful, number one, the doors weren't opened. We were not telling Jeanette and that ministry team that we want it here. We really want it here, and we believe in this ministry. Never got that message. The message that I got from reliable sources was We don't want those people on our campus. Their parents are not fit. They've had to go to court. We don't know what these children are going to do. And these are from reliable sources, Ron, that they did not want that type of people on the campus. I think what's hurtful is the doors weren't open to us, and we had to scramble for ourselves. And that was something that was hurtful, and we had to be out of Bayside building by October. From what I understand, our church was aware that Bayside was going to no longer rent here, and they were going to be gone by the end of the year. So it was kind of like this hush-hush. We felt it wasn't transparent, and I think that that's what is the big issue. There was no transparency going on there. And why couldn't we, as our own ministry, please use our own facility? In the sermon yesterday, Pastor, you brought up, or even tonight, I'm sorry, but when I heard that our reach out was going to be the theme for 2019, it was like a slap in the face. We had a ministry going for how many years? I know I was in it 20 years ago when we started on this campus. And I know the Shankles were in it. There were a number of people. We've been doing that ministry for many years. These parents have been through hell. And some of them the children need to see their parents. And they are all court cleared. These are court-ordered visits. And to tell us that we don't want that type of personnel and that it doesn't work on this campus. So this is very hurtful. I calculated up. We serve anywhere from 8 to 12, maybe 14 families every Sunday. We have anywhere from 4 to 6 staff members every Sunday. We do over 600 hours of volunteer service. This church doesn't pay for that ministry. It pays for itself. When we do arts and things with these children, it comes out of the Child Connect funds. These parents would have to pay anywhere from $50 to $100 per visit per child if they had to go outside of our program. We charge them $10, and if they have 2 children, 5 children, they pay $10. And we're able to make that work. I really feel like we dropped the ball on this, and then to have our focus for 2019 be reaching out to the community where we were already doing that and completely ignored and basically doors closed to us is very hurtful.
Okay. Again, I have to acknowledge that because that's real. There's some hard feelings there. Again, I'll go back to, I don't believe there was a vote, to move this ministry. There was never a vote to move the ministry. And I understand there probably could have been some things that may have been done better. I agree that maybe we could have reassured the ministry that we want to keep you. I don't know how that was verbalized, but it was never voted to move the ministry. There were options that were available that worked within our current situation, and people that were serving then did not want to serve at a different time here in the Experience Center. They didn't want to use the buildings that were there because they were not good. So it wasn't like there was groups here that were pushing you out. But if somebody went up and told you that we don't want these people here, we don't like these people for whatever reason, again, you may think you belong to a perfect church, but again, it's like I said about the board. The minute you join it, it's imperfect. We are all made up of broken people. People should never tell you that. But I can't control that. We can't control that. You can't control that. None of us can. So sometimes people will say things that are hurtful, and they never should have said that. I apologize for that. It should not happen. You guys shouldn't be put through that because you are ministry leads and you're passionate about doing that and serving these people. Apologies. But it can happen, and those kind of things can continue to happen because of who we are.
I object to some degree. We're getting dragged off subject here. But I must respond to one statement that was made here, and I think it could lead to some confusion. I've been involved in ministry management for several years now, and we struggled over this issue of the Child Connect, and a message was transmitted, but it wasn't from us, that somebody didn't like these people on our campus, but it came from outside our church. So I don't want anybody to go away from here saying our church members don't want Child Connect people on campus. It wasn't from us, it was from our renters. So I just want to clarify that. What I say now, I say at risk that Fred's going to come over and break my new windows. I've been involved in church ministry and leadership for many years of my life here and on church board, and I thought that the idea of having a board as it's structured now was a great idea because we spent a lot of time on old-fashioned church board members meetings doing mundane things like paying the bills, but we never get around to ministry and mission and visioning. And this 9-member board was commissioned to set the vision for our church, to set the mission for our church, and that's the reason I think it's powerful and that it's effective. Is it perfect? No, and sometimes there's communication issues, but I think we ought to move on here, let it continue, not come back and revisit this every year. If it needs to be revisited, we can certainly deal with that and bring it back for refinement, but I speak to continuing the present system.
Thank you, John.
I would also just add, too, that subcommittees that would have existed under any system, such as facilities, also gave recommendations regarding Child Connect, too, which, again, is not very actually mundane to the motion, but just to correct some of what's been given out there that the board or anybody else just went a different direction with this. The board values Child Connect and wanted it to happen. Options were given for Child Connect to still be here, and they were not accepted by the leadership and the people involved, unfortunately. I hope that that can change, but I just, for clarity's sake, no one on the board or anywhere in the leadership has ever wanted Child Connect to be gone.
Okay.
Very short comment. I'm sorry, you were here first.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry, Dwight.
I just wanted to quickly say I'm not sure what the best structure is for this, but I think that the general feeling that you're having to address here is one that there's a few making the decision for many. And so that's something I'm not sure how best to overcome that.
Meetings every month is how you would overcome that. Yeah. So we can meet like this monthly, that is or weekly or whatever it takes. So that's the goal is that this group meets and evaluates what happens yearly and says, okay, let's continue to go. So if the group wants to make decisions as a whole, that would require a business meeting literally every month. We could decide to have more frequent business meetings than once a year, but and that's fine. So if that's something that this church that wants is to have more frequent large body meetings, if we want to discuss the management details at a large level, that's something that we would have to decide in our structure. Traditionally, we have tried to move away from that and have a smaller group of people make those decisions that allows more efficiency in thinking and more depth in thought.
So I think one thing that happens, though, is that decisions are made and then we learn about them after the fact.
Communication.
And so that's something where, yeah, it could happen like that, or it could simply happen where there's an opportunity for communication of decisions that are made before they actually are implemented.
And I would wonder how many people read the church board minutes, the effort that's made.
You might be doing it more.
And I would hope that you do. I would hope. I mean, we had people, we had people when we moved to the Experience Center here say that they were just floored by that. That was in the minutes for like 6 months before that. So what that says is no one actually is taking the time to actually read the minutes. That is your form of communication. The financial statements are your form of communication. If you're shocked with where we are, maybe we need to do more to communicate that, and you need to help us know that. But if you're shocked by where we are and the decisions that are being made, it's because you're not trying to be informed until the business meeting. If you show up once a year here and expect to understand everything, and you've made no effort any other time of the year, any organization or structure we come up with, other than us meeting every week, is not going to make you happy.
You're right.
Fred, wait just a minute. I want to respond to that too, Dwight. So we all know Amazon, right? We all know about Amazon. It's Amazon.com. That's a huge corporation, huge. The fact about going to a small group, leadership group, is not out of the ordinary. So I think his name is Jeff Bezos or something has a statement that, that a board that's the size any larger than being able to feed them with 2 large pizzas is too large. So Amazon, which is this huge company, is ran by, I believe it's 10 people. So it's not out of the ordinary to have a small group that makes some decisions, because like Nathan said, if the ministry management team in the past making decisions with 23 people was slow and daunting, making month-to-month business decisions, if we had to literally come back and every decision have a business meeting, we would not be able to cast a vision. We would not be able to have made a decision to send somebody for the first time, thank you, Brandon, to go to Andrews on campus in person to interview graduates who could possibly be a youth pastor, and that was how we found Leif. Like Gail had said earlier in his talk, the way we found some of the task force workers were who was available out of the local colleges, and they worked out, and they were really good young people. But that was different. Moving from the sanctuary to here was different. Having Amen Clinic was different. Having a full-time youth pastor instead of these leads or these task force workers that bond with our students and then leave. And then there's a month, several months break, and somebody comes back and bonds and leaves. Having a full-time youth pastor is huge to our youth program. So could we have accomplished those? Yes. Could we have accomplished those within the same window that we did if we had to have a meeting, a business meeting like this, every single decision-making process? I don't think so. So I think eventually, I'm only here because somebody asked me to serve. I only have been board chair because I was asked to serve. And when I was asked way back a long time ago to be an elder, be a head elder, I can't tell you how frightful I was of that. The people that know me at that time know. I stepped in my fear to serve. That's what I always try to do. So if you don't want the current board there, you vote them out or whatever has to be done if you're not happy with us and what we're doing. But eventually you've got to get a group of people that you trust are meeting prayerfully, that they are looking to follow God's leading, and that what they're doing is with the right reasons to move people closer to God, to fulfill God's purpose. And if you don't feel that, then make the changes there, maybe people-wise, but to have a board that's held over every decision, you got to come back to a church and business session, I don't think would be the best way to do things. Fred?
I may differ on that one.
Fine.
But historically, we don't have to have church business meetings once a year. I think in the past they have been more frequent. And maybe they haven't been only annual because nothing has been that, necessary. But I think quarterly would not be out of the question.
No.
Also, historically, Placerville, the Adventist community in Placerville has not been your norm. Being a former school teacher here, I was told when I came into the community that, hey, Placerville's different. We don't have as many Indians. We have a lot more chiefs. Most of us here have a mind of our own. We're not so inclined to let other people make decisions for us. That's why I think as a church entirely needs to have a little bit more to say about what's going on. And so I propose, and I know there's a motion on the floor, which I can't make another motion, but I propose that we consider strongly making a change, not because I don't like the board, but because I think it's not working. It's not benefiting us as much as I think it should be. And as far as having strategic planning as opposed to operational board, I think the Board of Elders should be capable of doing that. And I think in many churches, non-Adventist and Adventist, the Board of Elders does do strategic planning. And when I was on it a year or so back, it did do some strategic planning. And I think the Board of Elders is very capable of doing this and bringing it to the church and saying, this is what we'd like to do next year or next quarter, or here's 3 or 4 ideas we'd like to do for outreach. What do you think? Should we go this direction? We do all 4 of them? I think that's the direction I'd like to see happen.
I don't think any of us would hesitate out of having quarterly business meetings. That all adds to the communication piece. There's a logistical thing as far as other people serving and setting that up. It falls on those people. So thank you, Daisy and your crew, and those that set up tonight. It would be a little more daunting for that, but that adds to the communication piece. I don't think any of us on the current board would say, halt, we can't do that. There's no reason do it. But if it comes to, like Nathan's point, a business meeting for every decision, that you have to admit, that's pretty daunting for a board to follow. Ron?
I'm praying here to say the right thing and come across the right way. I've been asked to serve on this 9-member board, and I would have said no normally. I am completely excited about the direction of what this church is doing with this new organization. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars learning how to get organized. I've been running a business for 40 years with 35 employees, and I thought I knew quite a bit about organization. One of my homework assignments that the pastor has insisted that I read a book. It's Winning on Purpose. Is that the book? And I'm telling you, it's one of the best books I've ever even conceived of to run a church organization. And I would encourage all the people that clapped that you read that book, okay? And we need to educate ourselves. We have a responsibility as being members to educate ourselves. And it's opened up my eyes, and I'm just so excited about where this is going. I have lots of experiences over 40 years, and you guys have probably 60 years of doing church. I mean, is the church growing how you want it? I mean, we came 22 years ago, and it's about the same size or smaller. Is that what you want? Do you want your grandchildren to be coming here, or would you rather not have your grandchildren in the church? I'm not saying that smugly. I'm saying that very honestly. I want to be a part of a growing organization. I don't want to just play church. And with this new structure, and again, I would encourage you to read this book, to get educated. All these guys have read this book, and that's the direction. It's very, very exciting. And I think there's a little misunderstanding about what the church board, somebody said that the decisions have to go through the ministry management team and then go to get approved by the church board. That is absolutely not the direction, right? That's not, for me reading this book, and again, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but the purpose of this 9-member board is to set vision and mission for the church, and then you guys vote on that. Okay, and then their job is to hold the pastor accountable. The pastor is responsible to run the church based upon that triangle that you showed, Ron, as far as trust, and also you mentioned about you want 23 people back again, some of you, but actually the pastor's in charge of the 17-member ministry management team, and that's basically the old type board. Has the heads of all the ministries. And that's where the individual decisions and the trust needs to be laid down to the individual ministers, okay? And then so each of the 4 groups in our church, the church board, the pastor, the staff, and now the members have a specific responsibility, okay? And unless you read a little bit more on this, I didn't understand it completely, and I'm so excited about this. And I know that some people got hurt. I just feel really bad. I think that's something that obviously you guys are going to be working on, but I totally support the direction. And if you feel disenfranchised or feel decisions to be made, go talk to any of the members and just really have a one-on-one with an open view, and I think that will really help. Okay?
All right.
You can just, by consent,
Okay.
pick up first.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, John. I was reminded that we had voted from the floor the 2-minute time frame, which I've violated that. A lot of us have, so I apologize. So I know it's hard. I'd like to hear everybody say what they want to say, but we're going to try to, because it's getting late and some people are impatient. I think it's important that everybody's here with an opportunity to vote when that vote comes. So if we can try to stay within the 2 minutes, that would be helpful. And if I could get someone from the floor who will help me keep track of the 2 minutes, that would be helpful as well. If there's anybody that wants to volunteer to maybe keep track of that. No? I don't want to.
I don't have a phone. I don't have
Oh wait, I got it here. No, I don't have it here. Okay, I've got it. I've got a little timer on this. I'll try to do my best. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Hello. Yeah.
Bob Pace. I see 2 or 3 big problems. One, this room is not very full like it was last year. I see all this red ink. It might look yellow, but it's really red ink. And it looks like to me that the giving has been going down ever since we've been under this system. People aren't coming, they're going elsewhere, and I think that's a big problem. We need something changed, and I always want to change right at the top. We need to go backwards or forwards, whatever way you want to go, but 9 ain't enough. You don't have enough input to keep everybody happy. I've learned one thing being on boards. If you let everybody have their say, when the vote comes, they'll all go along with it, even if they voted no or they voted yes on something. But everybody has to have their say. And that's what's wrong with this board. Not everybody's getting their say. You need more people.
Okay, thank you, Bob. As far as the Nathan, I don't know if you heard him under his breath. As far as the money's going down, they did not. I think it went up by 4% or something like that. As far as 9 people only, I want you to remember how this works. So you have information that goes from facilities. Wally, how many people on facilities? 6, 7? I'm going to 8, somewhere in there. You have information that comes from building. I don't know, Art, 6, 7, somewhere in there. You have information that comes from MMT, 17. You have information that comes from Finance Committee. Again, Wayne, Nathan, that's probably 6, 8, somewhere in there. So all that information does work its way up to the board, both in paper format and through me, who attends every single one of those meetings. So those voices all come up. Those are people that you've elected to serve on these committees to bring information up. I don't want you to think that it's just 9 of us who huddle in a room without any information provided to us and in our own try to come up with the best decision where we feel God is leading, because I think that would be me misstating what actually happens. So, yes, Lois.
Hi, I have a, is this on? I have comment before I have what I was going to say. I have been on facilities committee for several years, and I was on ministry management for several years since we started this structure. And I think it's a very efficient way. And if people want to have input, they can come to these boards. I would like to call question.
Okay, parliamentarian, help me on this. So,
Requires a second.
there's a second. There's a second. Okay, now that you're really going to have to help me with. So, can we try to do this by a show of hands? The question has been called, which, Robert, I know you're there. So stay there. Well, it means to call for the vote. So to call, are we ready to call for the vote?
Right, so first they have to vote whether.
Yes.
I want to question the parliamentarian on this a little bit, because a statement was made, which was an argument, but then a call question on the motion. I think that's out of order for somebody to come up and make a statement and call question on the motion.
I think actually you're right about that. So I think that is out of order to call the question after making a comment. Thank you.
You guys both deserve a raise. I don't know who you talked to get that, but you both deserve a raise. So where are we at? We're back to.
So where you're at is you would continue with the next speaker.
And then call the question?
No, someone else would have to make that.
Well, I know I wouldn't, but it would be happening. It would come from the floor. So, Robert.
So, you know, this is really hard for me. Coming from the business world, it's been kind of a shock how things don't move smoothly. But I want to borrow a bit from the business world. I don't know that you have to meet every month. Thinking about your pyramid, I think bluntly there's a problem with trust. And I'm not even talking about myself. It's painful to see it. I think maybe it would be worthwhile. I don't know that it's even thinking about the structure, but there's a couple things that I see that don't always quite make sense to me that might work. Maybe we could do a quarterly meeting with these things. Also, respectfully, it tends to be unilateral communication, not even at the meeting, but there's a whole bunch of prep, whether it goes from sermons and things leading up to it. And then if you put it in front of anybody, they have to be able to think about what they've heard before they can ask meaningful questions. And if they can't think about it, they can't really articulate. A lot of people don't want to come up front. They don't know how to quickly articulate the idea. So it may be worthwhile to help us move forward, regain trust, do these things, get used to working with it, keep short meetings quarterly, put it out, give people the time to think about it. It would also allow the board, maybe even submit the questions so that the board could be prepared. I see a lot of meetings where we ask a question and somebody goes, do you know the answer? And they go, it's in the office. So maybe it might be worthwhile setting up a quarterly and then back and forth communication.
Okay, again, I think there's a lot of board members here, so I think we've heard loud and clear about the possible opportunity to have quarterly business meetings. So for those, Robert, so thank you. I think that's something that we will definitely visit in conversation. So John, Arndt, I don't know who was here next.
You may not like what I have to say, but I'm going to ask that we end debate. Call the question on the motion.
Are we good with
So
that?
now you're back. You need a second.
Okay, so is there a second? The question's been called. Is there a second? Is that Brandon? Is that you? Who said that? Okay, Dennis Badzik has seconded. So 2/3 vote. So I'm going to try to do this with a show of hand as best as I can, and you guys are going to have to help me visually. Arndt, you're up here. I might even ask you to put eyes.
Just to be clear, you might want to explain that they're
Okay, so
voting and debate, not on the main motion.
Voting is to just end the debate and then to go to vote on the motion that's on the floor. So that's all it is. It's called the question is actually to end the debate. No more coming to the mic to talk about the motion that's on the floor, and actually now voting on the motion. Okay? So can I, by a show of hands, can I see those that are in favor of ending the debate and voting on the motion on the floor right now? I think visually, does anybody disagree with me? I think that's definitely 2/3 and way above. So, yes. Are you guys all, is that a question or are you voting? Gotcha. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and vote on the motion. Arndt, I value what you had to say, so catch me afterwards, okay? So again, I'm going to read the motion. Recommendation to approve the current organizational structure with church board and ministry management team. A yes vote means we currently keep what is in place, ministry management team, and the current board structure. So you have these ballots, if you can mark them, and then if I can ask somebody that can help pick up those ballots, Larry, John, can you help with that too, please? Thank you. What do I vote? Did you guys understand?
Should we just go? We're done then?
Yeah, we are. Unless we need to announce anything, but can you give those to? Am I still on? Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, Reg, I forgot. Reg wants to make a comment about some brochures.
These brochures are available. If any of you would like one, I have them. Just raise your hand, I'll hand you one. Very good.
Thank you.
On the minutes, are we counting these to record the minutes or what?
Who's going to announce the vote?
Maybe I should.
Like 5 minutes and live feed is going to die.
What's going to die?
Live feed.
Live feed.
He's recording this.
Oh,
I'm taking the minutes. So I
okay.
just wondered if we're going to know the vote.
Yes, we will. Okay, so am I still on? Okay, so we have the votes. So we have 59 yes, 34 no, 1 abstain, so the motion did pass. Thank you. Thank you all for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here to participate tonight. And before we leave, I'd like to have a closing prayer. Let's pray. Father in heaven, thank you so much for this church. Thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to come together and conduct business that is important to us as a church body. And may we as a church body continue to move forward in reaching people for the kingdom of God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.